thousands of years ago, they were Apollo, Zeus, Ares. Now they are Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the other heroes and villains of DC and Marvel Comics. Join us every week as we discuss the legendary stories, characters, concepts, and other parts of comics as we examine the modern pantheon of heroes. Let's get heroic. Welcome to Under Two Capes, the podcast for the comic book fan. Welcome to Under Two Capes. I'm Jared, and today we are talking about Marvel's What If, episodes 2 and 3. So, a little bit of context. So, about Lad and I already did episode 1. You'll be able to find that on the YouTube channel and on the podcast. I believe that was like a couple episodes ago. But anyway, so going into What If, a little context. So, in a couple years ago, like a long time ago, historically, Marvel has produce these books called What If, where they take their classic storylines, change certain details in them, and then publish them to see like what kind of reactions you get. Like, let's put it this way: they had one where what if Hulk killed Wolverine? What if Doctor Doom became Doctor Strange? So when they announced that they're going to do a animated series, I was naturally excited because it's the multiverse and all that stuff. It's really cool. So going into into episode 2 now. So episode 1 was what if what if Peggy Carter became Captain America? But basically Captain America. It was the first Avenger, but basically a Captain America movie. Part 2 was what if T'Challa, the Black Panther, was Star-Lord? So first off, this was the last Chadwick Boseman performance as T'Challa, so I find that Wakanda forever, my brother. So moving on into the episode, this is basically if the Ravagers had kidnapped T'Challa by mistake instead of Peter Quill, because as you know, in the original storyline, Peter Quill became Star-Lord. So he shows up and it opens up like the first Guardians movie, except now when Ronan's henchman sees him, he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're Star-Lord! I am a huge fan of yours." And that guy ends up joining the Ravagers, where we have Gamora, we have Taserface, we have actually we would have Gamora, we have a Nebula. We have let's see, who was it? Yondu's apprentice. And then we have, so they end up at the space bar, and then it turns out Thanos is a member of the crew, because apparently what had happened is T'Challa diplomatically explained to Thanos that while his plan was efficient, it would essentially be genocide and thus can't happen. So in other words, T'Challa single-handedly stopped an Infinity War and Endgame from ever happening. Which that was the one point watching the episode where I was like, what? When Thanos shows up and Josh Brolin. So I was like, okay, this is weird, but I like it. So moving on, it's basically, they repeat a lot of the same themes of Guardians of the Galaxy, that like T'Challa now, which Nebula calls him Cha-Cha, and I love that. So T'Challa, like he sort of wants to go back to Earth, but Yondu, as we found out, lies to him and tells him that his family and his country was like destroyed. Wasn't. It's still there. So moving on, another thing I like, so they end up going to the Collector's place on Nowhere, where first off, he's employed the Black Order. So it turns out if Thanos doesn't employ the Black Order like he does in the main 616 universe, the Collector hires them as gang enforcers. That's why I like these what if so far, is because you see like it's a ripple effect, and they basically address this point in the DC movie Flashpoint, where like Reverse Flash said, you change one thing, it sends ripples out that lead to astronomical changes. That's why the whole Flashpoint universe went to hell so quickly, because Barry Allen saved his mother. But that's besides the point. So going back, then we get into, so they're doing a heist to steal something from the Collector. It's the seed that allows them to rebuild worlds. So eventually they're caught by the Collector, and then T'Challa has to fight him. Now, what I found was kind of cool is first off, T'Challa teams up with Howard the Duck like a second there, and I was like, oh, I know who that is, and it's really weird that he's included in this, but he did cameo in Guardians of the Galaxy movie, so I guess that's relatable. And then what I loved is, so when T'Challa's fighting the Collector's like grabbing all this stuff that he has, that he's collected, if you will. Like there's Cap's shield, there's Mjolnir, there's Korg's arm. So I'm like, oh man, Korg's dead. And they're fighting. And then what I love is eventually the Collector gets torn apart by his collection because they release him. And so also eventually, the way T'Challa finds out that his family's alive is because one of the things that the Collectors acquired was a Wakandan spaceship sent out to find him by his father. So they end up saying, okay, we're going to bring you back to your so they go back to Wakanda, and it's all rainbows at that point. So continuing on to episode 3. Episode 3 I just finished when our good friend Robert Kennedy suggested I cover these. A good topic, Robert. Thank you. But keep suggesting content you want us to see. Just drop in the comments. Okay, so going on. So when you get to What If episode 3, this was one of my favorite, because so it's basically a murder mystery, which I really enjoyed, and it's basically like DC's Identity Crisis, because that's what it turned into. It's taking place around Iron Man 2 time, and at this point, the Avengers are being killed off. Well, Avengers, I use air quotes here because this was during the time when Fury was assembling the Avengers. Like in Iron Man 2, when Stark had that weird like chemical reaction to the batteries he was putting in him, and Black Widow came up behind him and injected him with that syringe that had the cure, air quotes. He in this universe he died. And everyone's like, wait a second, he died. And then Black Widow is implicated. She escapes, and she has to go on the run and find out who killed him. So then we get to the Thor time in the movie. We get the scene eventually where Barton is up on a little watchtower, a little suspended basket. He's aiming his bow and arrow down. And then we get to that scene, except this time Barton fires and kills Thor. We're not really sure again, like, why would Barton fire? Even Barton's like, I didn't mean to shoot or anything like that. So they arrest him, put him in a jail cell. But then all of a sudden, when Fury goes in to see him, Barton's dead too. And here's the thing, no one has been in the room to see him. Then we get to then it's taking place in the Incredible Hulk timeline. So in other words, this thing takes place virtually in like 3 different movies, which I think is really cool. So we get to that point where in Hulk, where we're on the college campus, and so Black Widow is trying to figure out what's going on with the Avengers dying. She runs into Bruce Banner and Betty. The military shows up, and so seemingly he's shot by a sniper and turns into the Hulk. And then after a little while of fighting, he starts to like expand, like he's going full blob, and then the Hulk explodes, like literally explodes. Not like a nuclear bomb or anything, just explodes like in the type that you'd expect, like there to be a lot of gore, but obviously seeing as though this is Marvel, they're not going to show that. So Hulk's dead. Somehow they kill the Hulk. That'll be explained later. So Widow does some research, and then she comes across this file on Hope Van Dyne. You remember her as the Wasp from Ant-Man and the Wasp, and she's Hank Pym's daughter. So apparently in this universe, she was a shield agent. And as a shield agent, she undertook a mission that got her killed. Her father was hell-bent on revenge. So what we find out, actually, wait, hang on. Go back. So what also happens is, as a result of Thor's death, his brother Loki, also voiced by Tom Hiddleston, brings the armies of Asgard to Earth to get retribution. And Fury's like, okay, wait a second. Let me catch this guy because he's killed our people too. Let me catch this guy. I will give him to you. Problem solved. We can just move on. So Fury gets I think like 12 hours or so to deliver the murderer. Then Black Widow is killed because she finds out who it is and she gets thrashed about. Seemingly in the episode, it looks like she's just like being thrown about, like someone's using the force and just throwing her around. This is when I figured out who it was, or actually the power, who it could be based on the power set. So she manages to get a phone message to Fury saying it's all about Hope. And then Fury's like, where have I heard? Oh, wait. So he goes to the gravesite of Hope Van Dyne. It turns out Yellow Jacket, Hank Pym, is there. And you remember in the comics, one of Hank Pym's many identities after over the course of his publication history has been the Yellow Jacket. It's basically a yellow Ant-Man suit. Discovered that he's the murderer. So what had happened was in the scene where Black Widow injects Iron Man, he was in the syringe. He went in there and just screwed around with his brain and killed him. As it relates to Thor, when Barton was aiming the bow and arrow at Thor, Hank jumped at Barton, a little tiny, and then like caused his like hand to spasm and release the arrow. Then with Barton, he just went in his head and screwed him up. As it relates to Hulk, he went inside Hulk, and then those little resizing discs that he has, that when you throw it at something, it like makes it grow large. He threw that at the Hulk's heart. So the Hulk's heart was what was expanding, and then boom. And then Black Widow, he just threw her around. At that point, during that scene, before they even revealed it was Hank Pym, I was like, it's either Hope Van Dyne or Hank Pym, because I didn't think it was Scott Lang because they hadn't introduced him yet. And the fact that we just saw the reveal of Hope Van Dyne. So I thought it was Hope that was like maybe pissed off that they left her behind on a mission or something like that. But it was actually Hank because he blames Fury. So he wanted to take everything away from Fury. So at that point, Fury is fighting and Hank Pym get into a fight, and it looks like it's Fury. But what's interesting, first off, he's laughing and saying very un-Fury-like things. He's quipping. And then he starts using what appears to be super strength. And it turns out it's Loki disguising himself as Fury as he goes about pummeling Hank. So they deliver Hank Pym to the Asgardians. Fury fulfills his promise. Now, this is where it gets really cool. So Loki's like, I'm going to take over. Because this also brings in the Avengers movie, because Loki wanted to rule Earth. And they get into that whole line in Avengers 1 where Loki was like, isn't this your natural state? You crave subjugation. And they have that whole line. And Fury goes along he has caskets for all the Avengers. And then Fury was like, we need new Avengers. So he tracks down Captain America's plane, revives him. Then he hits the beeper that brings in Captain Marvel, and that's where it ends. But it actually ends pretty well, because Fury's like, welcome back, Captain. And then also you see a glow, and then there's Captain Marvel. So anyway, going on. So that's episode 3. Now, I'm going to give you my general thoughts on the show. It's fantastic. I love how I like Elseworld stories like a lot. And I'm really glad that now Marvel's really delving into their multiverse, because they have arguably a multiverse on par, or at least close to DC. I still think DC is better because I'm a hardcore DC fan, but I still love Marvel. One of the things I think was especially interesting is the way in which that one detail changes everything. Like, Hope Van Dyne is killed. Hank Pym basically becomes like a Punisher-like character and kills everyone. Actually, that's true. Hank Pym is basically the Punisher. He's killing everyone he thinks are responsible for the crime. That's an interesting analogy. So anyway, and then I really, really, really like how how it plays on that one detail. Because remember, let's say like go back to the what if Peggy Carter became Captain America, basically. Small detail was Peggy Carter happened to decide I'm going to stay in the room with Steve when he gets put in the chamber. And then the ripple effect is that the agent, the Hydra agent, clacks off the bomb faster, shoots Steve, so Steve can't get in the machine, so Peggy Carter has to go in the machine. So I like how that one detail change of where Peggy Carter is in relation to the plot of the original Captain America movie changes everything. The same thing goes for like Star-Lord. He happens to leave Wakanda at that moment, right as the Ravager ship is just parking there. And then what I liked is the way in this one, in part 3, that one detail is Hope Van Dyne was a SHIELD agent and killed. There you go. And that sets off these line of events. I really like this. And I like how I really hope that they start building that, like the season finale of this is a big epic like team up, and it's like multiversal Avengers, because they did that car commercial that's basically kind of like an Avengers scenario there, which I think would be really dope. And it also has me wondering real quick what the next one's going to be. Drop in the comments what you guys think the next what if is going to be, or which ones do you think would be really interesting to see? It could be like Marvel's. Well, I hope Marvel Zombies is coming up soon because I love that one. I'm really excited for that one. Now, as it relates to, let's see. So, where do I think it's going from this? So, what I think is interesting, what they could invest in doing is basically bring in characters from What If that are famous. Obviously, they can't bring in T'Challa, but they can bring in like Peggy Carter, Captain America, because as far as I know, Haley Atwell loves playing Peggy Carter and thinks she'd like being a super soldier. And she could like team up with Sam Wilson. They could even bring in that Steve, and then he becomes that's how they bring back Steve Rogers in this world. That'd be pretty cool. And they could do let's see what else. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else they could. So, in other words, they can use that to bring in new characters, and they can also use it to correct mistakes. Because let's say there was a particular character that was annoying, Brie Larson. They could use that as an opportunity to bring in a different version of Captain Marvel and make it better. They could say in the Marvels, Carol Danvers leaves, or like goes away, or even dies. Then we have Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel, which everyone wanted to begin with. And then what happens is they have an event, which is why I'm pretty sure that the next like Endgame style moment is going to be Secret Wars, because what that is, they can take the multiverse, break it down, and then fold in all the elements that we want into one universe, and then rebuild and then restart the Marvel universe. So what I think they could do is build up to a sort of Secret Wars style event. I mean, the Jonathan Hickman Avengers story. Obviously, we would need to, if they're going to do it exactly, we would need Doctor Doom. There are a few characters we would need to be in play before we could do that. But first, I think that's the one way they could top Endgame. And second off, it allows them to really play with the multiverse and get better versions of characters in. I mean, Lord knows, we just had the Spider-Man trailer, which was amazing, by the way. That's going to be tomorrow's episode, where we see like the Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2. So I'm like, so you're basically doing Secret Wars. It seems like they're building up to that, because at this point, it's like, it's interesting. So let's see, what next? What next do I want to talk about? Okay, so and let's see, another thing. Okay, so now I'm going to conjecture on what ifs I want in season 2, because I'm not going to conjecture on season 1 because we already know which ones are in season 1. Season 2, I would love to see. This is a good one. what if Iron Man was the Vulture? So in other words, Iron Man is the antagonist in Spider-Man Homecoming, because what they could play off that is that he's trying to manipulate Peter. He manipulates Spider-Man into committing these crimes for him. Somehow he tells him, okay, so those are all bad guys. You dress as cops, you can take him down or something like that. And then Peter finds out and confronts the Vulture Iron Man, not unlike he did in the movie. They could even do, let's see, what other what ifs do I really want to see? This is how, another thing, this is how they can bring in the X-Men, because they could say, what if mutants existed in the MCU? And at that point, what I would say, here's how I'd bring in the mutants for a what if. It's what if, what they could do is make it so, what if the snap like killed the Hulk? And what they could do is have it like this. So the Hulk, so they assemble the nano gauntlet. Hulk is gonna snap his fingers. When he does so, he explodes, kind of like what we saw in episode 3. Now, at that point, the gamma energy is released, combined with the energy of the Infinity Stones, it sends a wave out, and then it creates mutants, which is where we get like Charles Xavier and all the other people there. So, in other words, that's how we bring in the mutants. Or if you want to make it like they were always there, you can make it where what if. Now, this was an idea that I heard on a Comics Explained channel, but that video that I really liked. It's basically what if mutants did exist in the MCU the whole time, and here's how you could do that. You can make it where Project Rebirth, the project that made Captain America, was actually to fight the mutants. It's the same with Weapon X and such. I think that'd be really cool. What if? Let's see. What if, I'm trying to see what else would be a really good what, and you guys can drop in the comments on what if storylines you would want to see. What if? Let me see. What if they would have? What if Jane Foster became Thor? But that's basically going to be in Thor: Love and Thunder. What if? They could even do like, what if Loki was God of Thunder? I would say, what if Loki won at Avengers 1, but that's basically what we got this time. And plus, if it's not that, that's why I think the what if is going to be where the Guardians of the Galaxy are basically the Avengers. But in terms of another what if I would like, I'm trying to think. Let's see. Oh, what if the Winter Soldier became Captain America? And they can make it like they can bring in like elements of Falcon Winter Soldier. They can bring in elements of like all the different Captain America movies. They could make it where it starts off. The beginning of the plot is basically like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when Steve and Bucky are fighting. Except Bucky actually kills him, and then he snaps out of it somehow. He kills his friend. So figures the best way to make things right is to carry on the legacy of Captain America, and he becomes the Bucky Barnes Captain America that we all want to see. They could do what if the Thunderbolt Ross became Red Hulk, which would be dope, because the thing about Red Hulk is the angrier he gets, the hotter he gets, and by hotter I mean actually the temperature. In other words, he can burn away, like he can burn through that wall right there. See, another one that I would love to see is what if Mysterio was Iron Man? Because once again, you get that whole manipulative incident, but that would be out. I'd love to see what if Iron Man did not die in Endgame. What if Captain America had died in Endgame? I want to see how what we've gotten so far would change. Or it was Captain America and not Iron Man who got killed. We can see Iron Man dealing with guilt after like all the trouble that he and Steve had, what with Civil War and such. We could see like Peter. We could see maybe Tony would walk away from being Iron Man because he would feel so distraught and unable to continue because of what happened to Steve. We'd also see like the world without Captain America, and it would be kind of hopeless. And then we could play into either Bucky or Sam getting the shield and becoming Captain America, and there you go. we could also do what if Taskmaster was cool in Black Widow? What if they actually did a comics accurate Taskmaster? There you go. That's the one I want to. That's what I want to see more than anything. What if Taskmaster was Tony Masters? They could also do what if the Avengers were the Guardians of the Galaxy? And it's basically the Avengers and equivalents. You would have like, I'd say probably in terms of attitude, Iron Man would be Star-Lord, Black Widow would be Gamora. I'd say Thor would be Drax. I'd say I'd make Korg. Well, in terms of Avengers characters, and then probably let's see who else would be good on a nice little adventure and a nice little space adventure. How about, let's see, okay, how about, I'm trying to think of a real wild card on who would actually be a really good well, so basically be like an Avengers team. Actually, put in there which Avengers would you like to see on the Guardians of the Galaxy if they did a what if the Avengers became the Guardians of the Galaxy. I'd love to see what you guys can come up with. They could do what if Thanos won and well, he did win. What if and they already kind of did a what if Thanos never never tried to assemble the stones. But what if Thanos won an end game? You could see how he rebuild the world. That would be cool. They could do what if, I'm trying to think of one that would be have like monumental. What if Captain America was Hydra and they basically do Secret Empire? There you go. That's another one I want to see. I think that'd be really cool, particularly since you have the multiverse. And then they could bring Hydra Cap in as like an antagonist for like a multiverse Captain America movie. Let's see what other what ifs I want to see. Actually, I'm going to take a break from that part and then just talk about the series how it's going for right now. I love the idea of them doing animated because here's why. First, you can reach a different audience than you can if it's live action. But second off, you're using another art form to express same ideas. And I think the animation style that they picked is very indicative of a comic book. It looks like a comic book. Everything looks like comic book panels and everything. It looks like 100% looks like it was drawn into a comic book. So I think that's why they went with that animation style. And personally, I like it. I know some people haven't been big fans of it. All right, one more thing. Drop in the comments what your favorite what if was, because I'd love to see what you guys love. Now, let's see. Do I have any complaints about the series? Yes, I do have one. It's not really a complaint. It's just one like small criticism I have. And it doesn't in any way take away from like how awesome the series is, but at least for me. But it's like they seem to be trying to. I get the whole you change one thing and it sends ripples, but and this is in reference to the first episode. So you're telling me her positioning changes when the guy decides to clack off the bomb? What? Like they're creating stuff that they're setting up scenarios that realistically would not cause him to detonate the bomb any sooner. So I'm like, okay, I see what they're going for, and then they seem to be cramming in too many what ifs. Like, what if Thanos didn't? What if Thanos turned good? What if? In addition to what if Charlotte's Black Panther? What if the Hulk? Well, actually, it was kind of. What if Loki took over the world? What if Captain America and Captain Marvel form the Avengers? It's like they seem to be cramming in like a lot of things. It's like, and then the first one, what if Steve Rogers was basically the Winter Soldier? So I'm like, well, I like that one because it put a unique spin. Because basically, what the first episode was a retelling of Captain America 1, except that it was basically with Peggy Carter as the Captain America character instead of Steve. So it makes sense that they go through the whole movie beat by beat, except change the characters and their positioning. So I was fine with that. But they seem to be cramming in so much into these series for like a half-hour series. And I'm like, gets to the point where after I finish one, I'm exhausted. I'm like, come on, guys. Because let me put it this way. I'm fine with the Easter eggs. I love the Easter eggs. I loved, once again, in the What If Star-Lord one, looking through the collection and seeing like what I recognize. Like I recognize the ships. I recognize like the wall of weapons. There's like tons of stuff in there that I thought, oh, that's pretty dope. So apparently in this universe, the Avengers were killed by the Collector. Or maybe they were killed by the Ravagers. I don't think they were killed by the Ravagers. Or they were killed by, I don't know. Oh, also, that was basically what if the Collector was Kingpin. So I'm like, okay, once again, there's like tons of what if. And there's changes that likewise would not be like a cascading effect. The only one from like episode 2 that I could see being like as a result of T'Challa is the Thanos thing, because he legit said, I talked to you and you showed me the other, that there's another way. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But when you get to like the bomb going off early, or somehow the Collector becoming a Kingpin, I'm like, okay, guys, this is weird and odd. Also, I find it hard to believe that in episode 3, that the countries of the United Nations would just band together and say, Loki's in charge now. Highly doubt that would happen. So that's one part where I'm, and everything would still be standing. What I thought was going to happen is that that he would like start a massive war, a war to take over instead of just waltzing in. I thought when they did the montage of like all the ships over all the major cities, it would be like fire and brimstone because everyone's fighting back, and that's why Fury gets the Avengers. However, it's just like the world just turned over. I mean, I get it, you're fighting God, so it looks hopeless, but no, you could still do that. You could still fight back, at least fight back. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. That's where the show loses me a little bit. It's just that it's just like really all the weird connections that it comes up with when it comes to what is a result of like the main change according to the title of the episode. Like there's no way that like Star-Lord being T'Challa would influence the Collector becoming a Kingpin. I'm like, okay, but what I did like is the nods to all the different Marvel scenes. Like they did the whole, they did the scene where Iron Man is eating the donut inside the donut, and then then Fury's like, I'm gonna have to ask you to get out of the donut, sir. And he goes, I told you I don't want to join your super secret boy band. They show the conversation beforehand with him and Black Widow, which I'm sure probably happened in the canon universe. You know, I like how they pay nods to the actual MCU. I think they do that fantastically, and they do it in a respectful manner, and in a manner that I think is really unique, because they could easily just change everything. But I like how they 100% grounded in saying this is in the MCU. Because once again, in the multiverse, they could pretty much just do everything, but they're basically set. And then that's what If was. A lot of the details would be kept, but certain story elements would be changed, which I guess that's why there's so many like weird things superficially related to the what if that's being discussed, because that's probably the way it was in the comics. So I appreciate that at least. Now let's see, what else can we talk about now as it relates to, and so once again, I'm sure they're using this as a testing ground to see which character's popular, which characters can we kill and bring back, like the Killmonger. I'm excited to see the what if Killmonger saved Iron Man, I guess that's called. And I'm interested to see how Killmonger saving Tony Stark changes, because remember, because of that bomb exploding, Tony Stark becomes Iron Man. This could be what if Killmonger becomes War Machine, and then he fights Ironmonger. This and then Lad and I talked about our theory on, or a theory on the Marvel zombies, that it's that virus that Rumlow was being extracted, and that would work because, and I want to reiterate this, because let's say the virus gets out during that whole battle scene, the beginning of Civil War, and then what happens is, so Captain America is exposed, and then he doesn't know it yet. He just feels kind of ill and stuff. So he figures, oh, okay, so I'll just be sick for a little bit. Then we cut to the Avengers compound, and that's the epicenter of the zombie apocalypse, where he goes crazy, kills the Avengers. Iron Man shows up, kills him, and then we get the Marvel Zombies world. This is how they're bringing in all those famous Marvel worlds that everyone wanted. I wonder if they're going to keep the idea of the zombies being sentient and then only being like taken over temporarily when they get hungry. That'd be interesting. But let's see, what else can we talk about in terms of what if? That's so. I do think that this is Marvel's chance to get into the animation market, because for so, I mean, I'm a DC fan. I've been very, very vocal about that on this podcast since episode 1. But what I think is interesting is that Marvel never well, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, X-Men the animated series, but they don't really have like that type of rich animated tradition that DC does. And I feel like this is Marvel's chance to catch up. And they're certainly doing a good job. I 100% am thoroughly enjoying What If. I think it's a captivating series. And once again, for all the reasons I've talked about in the past 37 minutes, I definitely enjoyed and felt that it was an interesting way to throw up to change these Marvel movies and to do new things with these characters. Because one of my complaints of the MCU is that they keep doing the same things over and over again with Captain America, Iron Man, and the like, and like they just never do anything new. So that's why I'm grateful for how they do it. Now, let's see what else. So, going back to what I was saying about the animation, this is because they said they're opening up their own like animated studio dedicated to the MCU, and I think that this would be an awesome way to introduce new characters in addition to their live action series. They could even bring in the X-Men, the animated, keep them in the animated universe on their own Earth. In other words, they could make a multiverse and then have the X-Men be their own Earth, which kind of feels like it's the way it is in the comics right now with Hickman and the Krakoan like island. They're kind of in their own world. And quite frankly, I think that's better, because then you avoid the criticism of, wait a second, if you're okay with that person having powers because like they picked up a magic hammer or got exposed to gamma radiation, but you're not okay with that guy who can shoot laser beams out of his eyes because he was born with that power. It doesn't make sense that one's hated for having superpowers and one's loved for having superpowers. Which is why I think X-Men is better when it's an Elseworldsy story, because then you don't run into that. That's why first they moved the X-Men to the West Coast, and then what they did in addition to that is they put them on Krakoa, because they can't really keep them in the same vicinity as the Avengers and not run into that issue. It just gets a little too much. It just gets a little too iffy. So I think that's probably how they're going to do it. They're going to do it in one of their series and have it be in the multiverse. Now, as relates to, let's see, as it relates to the multiverse. So once again, I've said that I'm pretty sure that they are going to do a Secret Wars movie. But if it's not Secret Wars, I think they could just do. So let's assume I'm wrong. Let's assume it's not going to be Secret Wars. Now, what it could be is they could do like this epic like revival of Civil War, but have the multiversal Avengers. In other words, the Avengers taken from all these different What If episodes, like Captain Carter, T'Challa, Star-Lord. They would have to change the voice for T'Challa, Star-Lord, but that's besides the point. And like Captain America from Ice and all that, and then have them fight the Avengers we have now, like Sam Wilson. I believe Hawkeye's still an Avenger. At a certain point, it's gonna be Yelena Belova. So I feel like that would be really cool to have, like, and they can call it Avengers Civil War. So that way, it's a kind of a play. It's basically what if the Avengers fought themselves. By the way, also one more thing I want to say about What If. So one of the most important characters in What If is Uatu the Watcher. He's of this race of beings called the Watchers, and they have this vow so they're all powerful beings, but they have this vow that they're only going to observe the world. They're not going to like screw around with it, and they play off of this a lot during the opening of What If, where it's Uatu narrating and saying, "I've taken a vow, I cannot interfere," and all that. Which, by the way, in the comics, he interferes all the time. What I love is I only noticed it in episode 3, and I might have missed in the others if it's not there. I'm pretty sure it happened in 1, so they might have it in all 3. You could see the Watcher like observing everything going down, like you could see his silhouette kind of in the background, and I'm like, that is eerily and actually creepily really cool how they pull that off. Because first off, all the environments are drawn to like perfection, but then they also have like, you'll be looking at like a sky vista. It's like stars, like a blanket of stars, Uatu, and then blanket of stars. And he's like got the eyes. So it's like he's actually just watching it. No one notices, first off, the giant bald guy just hovering and just watching. Well, he's not really hovering, he's like in space. But I'm like, no one notices this. I guess they can't see it, but we can because we're the audience and we're awesome. Yeah, I really like how they fit in Uatu to like all that. They definitely do that in a really creative way to make it look really dope. And I will say, the plots themselves, like how they get to the What If and what happens as a result of the What If, ignoring my criticism about some of these things not being tangentially related to the story, like the bomb going off again because Captain Carter decided to stay in the room. Despite that, storylines are great. I like the Captain Carter one. I love the T'Challa Star-Lord. I think he was great as Star-Lord, but I love the Avengers like murder mystery storyline where you think it's Black Widow, but but it's not her. You think it's Hawkeye, but he has no memory of pulling the trigger. The Hulk explode. I thought it was Loki at first, honestly, because I was like, okay, so Hawkeye fires the arrow, right? So that must have been like Loki mind controlling him because he's the god of mischief, or impersonating him, and he just fires. But then when I saw like the tiny guy, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. But my issue, one issue I have here, now I think about that, I just thought of, okay, so, and this comes from after watching the Ant-Man movies where Scott Lang grows into a giant guy. It could be that this is not like an option that was available in the Yellow Jacket suit, but at no point did Hank Pym decide to grow to a ginormous size and crush Loki Fury. By the way, I'm calling it that. That'd be fantastic. That'd be hilarious if that's the variant in Loki season 2. It's Fury becoming Loki, and then it's Samuel L. Jackson being Loki. But anyway, at no point did he decide to like grow and just crush him underfoot. That would have honestly been, it would have been interesting, by the way, if they did like a What If where like Loki won, or in that Loki one, Loki grows super high and crushes Nick Fury, and he goes, but basically Ant boot, just like in Avengers 1. Okay, but so once again, like I said, I love the storylines and what they do, and I love how once again they're doing something unique for once instead of just rehashing old storylines. They're taking old storylines from the MCU and changing them and doing new and unique ways of making new storylines. Because they legit made a murder mystery. They legit made a crime show. Especially CSI Marvel over there. They made this really dope war movie. They basically made Wonder Woman. In fact, they kind of did like an homage to Wonder Woman, and it shows Peggy like with the shield running across the trench as machine guns are firing at her. So I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing there. as a DC fan, I appreciate that homage, Marvel. That was so sweet of you to admit we're superior. But anyway, so so far, my top what if that I'm excited for now, I'm going to teach you this, and I'm going to close up, is Marvel Zombies #1, because Marvel Zombies. What if Spider-Man becomes the Sorcerer Supreme? I kind of see that. What if Gamora got the Infinity Gauntlet? Because I'm wondering what happened to Thanos. Did she kill Thanos? What if, I think I know how this is going to start off. It's going to be an Infinity War when they first meet, like where the Guardians meet Thanos, and then he kidnaps Gamora in the movie. What if she actually does kill him? He doesn't have time. He doesn't have time to like set off the Power Stone. I mean, the Reality Stone, just chops his head off. And then she goes crazy because she killed the father, and then she becomes Thanos, basically. That'd be super cool. And then she joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's how we get like the Guardians of the Galaxy becoming the Avengers thing. Earth's mightiest heroes. That's why I think that they can really go for that. And then the Avengers being the Guardians of the Galaxy is my other favorite. So yeah, I think that's about a good place to leave it. We are still working on the website. Tyler's working very hard on it. We have new marketing images that we'll be factoring in. There's already a new like icon for the podcast on like all the audio platforms. The YouTube channel has its own logo. I'm gonna put up the banner, the YouTube banner soon, and we're basically just working on making this like production look more professional. In fact, we even changed the YouTube channel name from Comics League Network to Comics League because it just flows better. And plus, when you have a name of something, here's a little tip: you want it to be kind of short because always just too much to put in there. Anyway, we'll let you guys know when the website is up, and it's looking pretty gorgeous. I get updates from Tyler all the time, and it's gonna look really, really cool. And from there, you're gonna be able to access like all of our shows: Star Wars, Halo, X-Men, which will be recorded tomorrow, by the way. We're going to be talking about, I think it's time to talk about House of X Powers of 10. Yeah, we're going to talk, we'll either talk about House of X Powers of 10 or Avengers versus X-Men. One of those. So I guess that's a good enough place to leave it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Robert, thanks for suggesting the video. And we'll see you guys later. Ciao. Stay warm.